September 2021 and the traffic signals industry gets back together with more than 250 signals experts gathering in person for the JCT Traffic Signals Symposium. Here are the highlights thanks to AGD Systems, Colas, SRL, Smart Video and Sensing, Vivacity and Unex Traffic. Although there are more than 20 papers being delivered in the lecture theatre, there's so much more to the symposium than the papers, the exhibition and the networking as well. So let's go and talk to some of the exhibitors and the delegates.
It's fantastic to be here, Paul. Let me tell you, it's been long awaited. It's great to actually see the live people rather than seeing them all on the screen. Yeah, and we've put a bit of effort into our stand this year as well. And
the radar product from Smart Micro has been launched during the pandemic and appears to have taken hold with local authorities. They seem to love it.
They do, and we're seeing more and more authorities approach us, which is really interesting because the word is getting around internally, which is great for us because we're not having to do the marketing. Really, it's marketing itself. And just by way of comment as well, as there's been some discussion on Topaz this morning, we've actually applied now for the Topaz registration for our product range as well.
And so, what does it do, the TrueGrid system, that makes it so sought after?
Well, it's an intelligent radar. There's two families primarily. There's what we call our standard family and our premium family. It gives the client a huge choice of multiple lane, multiple, should we say, simulated loop positioning, multiple target tracking and a heck of a lot of additional data. So you can use the radar, for example, for scoop, mover or just general detection requirements, but then you can also gather data such as speed, gap, headway, classification, counts, and all of the other bits and pieces that come along with it, which then go into, which are then collected by our Novus unit, which we developed thankfully with a grant from Innovate UK, for which we're very thankful.
And SVS signed a new deal at the symposium with fellow exhibitor SRL. After 2 years away, new products were very much part of many stands.
So we got the AG318, which is tried and proven to be a really good substitute for loop detection, especially in mover and SD environments. So we've taken a lot of the learning from the 318 and applied those tools to the 306 just for your standard MVD type of detection, so your XYZs or your turn rights, so applications along those lines.
So explain to me, if you were a local authority and had the headache of loops in the road being cut, not working, and then that puts all your traffic light synchronization out, how does the above ground detector that you're producing take away those headaches?
So the above ground detection is non-intrusive in the carriageway. So you've got a lot less TM to put them up for starters, so your capital costs go down. And then the lifetime of these products is in excess of 10 years. So you can pretty much fit them, and yeah, they need a check over with the annual inspections, but pretty much they're self-sufficient for a decade of just constantly telling you when there's vehicles approaching your traffic lights.
In the last 2 years since we were last here, of course, the focus on active travel has become huge. What are you doing in pedestrian or cycling detection?
If we can sort of have a look at over here at the AGD 640 and 326, so they sit with our pedestrian strategy, which is for puffing in toucan type environments. So again, we've taken the richness of that data and give the users the experience to play with the tools that are available. So for example, with the curbsides, where it was a static image, it's now live video. So the user, when he's setting it up, can fully see where people are walking from the detector's point of view rather than a static image. And the AGD 326, the on-crossing radar, which is hugely popular, one of the most popular products we do. We not only now give you 24 meters range, but we can also adjust the width of the detection platform, the detection zone. So we allows the sort of local authority to narrow it down, make it wider depending on the crossing environment. So we've really moved the experience on. Plus, it also gives you live data. So that live data, instead of having one person looking at the red light while somebody else is walking up and down the zone, you can see that data on the screen as the crossing is being used.
The symposium is all about meeting people from the industry, having the conversations, sharing knowledge and networking. We'll go and have a look around the exhibition in a moment, but first of all, let's go into the lecture theatre and see what's being talked about this year.
I think anyone that's been in the business for as long as I have, for 30 years, will probably agree that we are really at a tipping, it feels like we're at a tipping point now where things will change radically in the next few years, maybe more quickly than they have done at any time, certainly in my working life. We need to be preparing for that. So we have projects such as Talking Traffic, which we are currently bidding for through the spending review. The Dutch have recently, in the last couple of years, introduced a project which has looked to work out what the use cases for connected vehicle data could be. What will it actually do for users and local authorities? What are the 6 things or 7 things it will deliver, such as green light advice and smart parking guidance, better asset management? And what they've done is they've collected those use cases and delivered technology to support them nationally across the Netherlands. And that's an absolutely exemplar way of doing it, because it allows the Netherlands to really understand what this could do, and it allows them to start to nurture this market and grow this market and get people used to what technology could deliver. We want to do that in the UK. We're currently bidding for money to do that, and hopefully, as we find out what happens through spending review, we may be able to announce something soon. But we want to start to deliver connected vehicle technologies. That's absolutely an absolute essential part of that is delivering infrastructure. It's delivering the right infrastructure, the right roadside infrastructure, the right communications, the right trust models, the right cyber security to deliver that. And this is something that we will be working with local authorities and suppliers, both new suppliers and existing suppliers, to try and really embed in the industry. Where do we take standards such as Topaz 2500? And this is the first one we're thinking about. Where do we take standards like that next? Well, where we take them next is to turn them into a digital standard. We need to build a digital structure for how we store traffic signal controller data. We need to do that for a number of reasons. Connected vehicles will need to know about signal phase and timing. They will need to know that to be able to operate GLOSSA. How do you collect that information? Do we need a standard to do that? Connected vehicles will need to know what junction they're approaching. We need some form of national way of understanding signals, understanding where they are, nationally referencing them. At the moment, we don't have that. We've never really needed it, but in the future, we will need that.
We saw cutting-edge technology from inside the vehicle.
In here, I'm going to share a few bits of this video that explain our site acceptance test. And as you can see, we were recording on a Teams call when we were extracting data, and so it was very tricky during COVID stuff because it was in last May. But as you can see in there, all the IVI messages that I mentioned before are displayed in the HMI. So once you approach the map area, you'll be able to see the display being changed. As you can see that. Wasn't part of our scope, but we tested and validated during this SAT as well, our GLOSSA. So as you can see in the first picture in here, we, based on your speed, the current speed, you can actually receive the advisory speed to be able to achieve the truck signal in the junction on time or for green. And you can see here as well, depends of the lane that you are, everything came from the Map2X that we created.
The symposium was a key moment for Siemens business Unex Traffic, which was not only presenting but also exhibiting under its new brand for the first time.
So we're here, it's the same people, same colleagues, same very broad portfolio that we've always sold. So effectively we're here demonstrating and discussing everything about what we do.
Which included some detailed explanations of innovations.
And what you'll see is, you'll see a prototype version of the Fusion UI to help monitor what's happening on the links. I'll use some language that will be familiar definitely for Scoot users. So this is one of the Fusion links that you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, and then you'll see the traffic running in the Wandsworth region in London. So some of the things to just point out here, just to give you guys a flavour of how we've been approaching it. So we also are looking at vertical queue lengths within Fusion in a similar way to a lot of the traditional systems out there. What this graphic actually shows is as objects, as cars travel over the detector, we're actually representing all of it. So there's a 16-second delay from the car driving over the loop until it arrives at the stop line. So when you're for those really keen eyes amongst you, you'll sort of see where you're like, is there really 5 cars there? But this graphic's actually just amalgamating the two together. So you'll see stop line queues and everything over the detector.
For a traffic signal symposium, the latest technology to improve efficiency is always going to get a large amount of attention, and GLOSA was covered in detail within the presentations.
GLOSA displays the signal heads in car, as we've seen from one of the presentations earlier. So the deployment that we're doing in York is actually going to be a public-facing deployment, which I'll talk a little bit about in a second. So essentially, the speed advice is given to the driver. We've opted for cellular comms, so that anybody with a smartphone, regardless of income, they don't have to worry about getting an expensive car with modern technology built into it. You can have an app a bit like you would, let's say, SatNav or something like that, and it opens it up to more incomes to be able to experience using GLOSA. And also, the reason we wanted to do it publicly was so that ultimately someone sooner or later has to push this out there, rather than just doing sort of trials in a controlled environment, and start learning real-world things such as how do the public actually perceive using the service? What are the problems in maintaining something like this in the real-world environment? And feeding that back to the project sponsors, so the Department for Transport, feeding it back to other local authorities like yourselves, so that if you're interested in something like this, there's real-world deployment.
I think I'll show you a full run-through of the GLOSA app in operation on and off slip, just so you can see what the sort of testing runs were like.
Maintain speed near 54 miles per hour. Maintain speed near 46 miles per hour. Maintain speed near 40 miles per hour. Maintain speed near 40 miles per hour. Green for 9 seconds.
So I wanted to show you that just so you had a sense of sort of what the testing involved, and a sort of a full run through of GLOSA on and off slip, just to see how it works basically.
While we also saw the latest in bus priority.
Now, I did present on this last year, just about the concept of what we were about to embark upon. We then did do 10 of these bus priority reviews. They were very successful, so we added another 33 to the time review program, which delivered some really good benefits last year. So much so that we've now got 50 bus priority optimization reviews on the time review program for this year. The key thing that we've done differently in terms of our site selection is, whereas previously we just used scoot data to identify where certain junctions might be in need of a review, what we learned from the pilot was that just using scoot data alone wasn't enough. We were going to some junctions that were very low in terms of bus priority activity, and we got there, and frankly, they were very low because there were very few buses going through them. So it was limited in our scope of how we could improve the bus priority there. So what we did was we took the scoot data, and we've cross-referenced it this year with the actual number of buses that travel through a junction.
One of the advantages of the symposium is that you can listen to a presentation within the lecture theatre.
I'm going to tell you a few words about a new option for delivering information to road users. This is called Flowell. This is an innovation developed by the Colas Group, So basically, what are we talking about? It's Flowwell is just a combination in between traffic signal, road marking, road studs. Basically, that's a very slim panel. In fact, it's a multi-layer compound of composite materials encapsulating an array of LEDs. And this array of LEDs can be operated throughout a control system on and off to create a fully dynamic road marking.
And then find out more about it in the exhibition.
Under snow is just unbelievable. Flowwell is almost as visible under 5 or 10 centimeters of snow as it is in normal conditions. The visibility is clearly a selling point for Flowwell. But the thing is that Flowwell, and we have measured that throughout impact surveys, Flowwell really makes a difference in terms of traffic safety, meaning that we are running surveys before and after implementation of every of our projects, and we noticed and we measure that people get a better understanding of the traffic flows, provoking a better compliance with road markings, traffic lights, and at the end of the day, that's improving road safety.
Over and over again.
Today, there's still a very significant divide between the permanent world and temporary world, and as I say, that's in my eyes have been opened up to that, a lot in the last 6 months, whilst I've been 8 months while I've been working with SRL. Like I say, different products, different specifications. And different suppliers. And when the temporary and portable, when the portable installations are actually deployed, they can often interfere with the permanent signals. I mean, I know there's going to be a lot of you in the room, but the last thing you want is for somebody to drop a set of temporary signals in the middle of your scoot region and really muck up the sort of timings and the way the traffic operates. But I think we just all see them as a necessary evil, really. And we just need to think about that in the future in terms of how we're going to go forward with that. But so that's not the main message here. I've not quite got to that yet. There's some convergence of specifications. So some of you will know that there was a raft of specifications around haul route crossings, around temporary signals, and various other temporary applications which have been pulled together into Topaz 2540. But there's still a massive difference or differential between Topaz 2540 and 2500, which is the permanent signal specification. And we need to really think about that as well, I think, going forward, if we're going to actually narrow this divide, which is the sort of mission that I've put myself on.
Kevin, I learnt something new at the symposium today, which is how little the fixed and the temporary traffic signals industries traditionally have worked together. As a journalist and therefore an outsider of the core inner circle of the industry, I didn't quite understand why that was the case. Explain to me how it came about that you just kind of lived in your own little worlds.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, really. I haven't been involved as long as I have, sort of going back 40 years in permanent traffic signals. Yeah, it's just the worlds never really came together. I think it was just that you had the people that were dealing with the permanent traffic signals, bearing in mind they really were on the ground before the temporaries that we know today came about. And I think it was just the permanent industry wasn't that interested in temporary signals when the sort of early versions of them started to arrive on the streets. So it was just different companies picked them up, different technologies. In the early days there wouldn't have been specifications, but when specifications came together, they were different specifications. And it was something that I was aware of, but I honestly confess I didn't really get to the bottom of how deep that divide was until I joined SRL in January, and then I'm now on the other side thinking, this is crazy. I mean, it's just such a big divide, and as I said in my paper, really going forward, that divide is going to cause all sorts of issues with the future, of sort of autonomous vehicles. I mean, we're a little way away from that, But we just need to start putting the foundations in place so that vehicles of the future can actually understand that temporary traffic lights are there that may not have been there the day before. And like I say, a vehicle approaches a set of normal traffic lights, it's got two, 3 or 4 reds or greens showing it. It's obvious it needs to obey those lights. But if it's approaching a set of temporary traffic lights, you might only see 1 green or 1 red. And is that a red traffic light or green traffic light or somebody with just a red light? So yeah, there's lots of work to be done. And as I say, I seem to have taken up this mantle of moving forward and sort of challenging this whole narrowing the divide concept, which would be really interesting, I think, to sort of spend the next few years of my career on.
I guess one of the issues was that even 20, 30 years ago, you were able to communicate with a fixed set of traffic lights, but for temporary signals, the comms probably weren't there. It was just too expensive and too difficult to do, so you just left them stand alone. Now the comms are enabling you to do so much more.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. And like I say, the comms wasn't there. And they were very much in the early days seen as a real problem for local authorities, because they had their systems in place. The early sort of TMS, traffic management systems, were trying to provide some coordination to traffic and trying to optimise traffic flow on the permanent signals. And then some roadworks would turn up and put a set of temporaries right in the middle of it and completely scupper it. And again, I think, part of that, and that they were seen as a necessary evil by a lot of the clients, was another thing that actually forced this divide, whereas in reality it perhaps should have brought it together.
So what are SRL doing in terms of narrowing the divide?
Okay, so basically, obviously with myself coming on board with the experience from the permanent world, I'm sort of taking a look at what we're doing in the temporary world, what's available. I mean, there's work needs to be done around specifications. Some of that work's already started. Working Group 4, for instance, and various bits and pieces that York are doing around sort of TTF-funded projects and things. Just need to get involved with them. And like I say, I'm probably now going to sit in the middle as a bit of a referee between the two industries and actually try and narrow the divide by getting communication across that divide and getting people to understand the potential issues, or at least the benefits of actually narrowing the divide, which I think are going to be very, very big in the future.
And I guess an event like this is the perfect place to push forward the importance of having that conversation, and you've got the right people that are going to solve it all in one room.
Exactly, yeah. And JCT's event, I think I've been to the last 20 plus of the 26 JCT events, so I've been here a lot, and yeah, it's the absolute right forum. And like I said in my presentation, one of the only times that I think the technology and the people behind the technology come together, is at these sort of events. And I think JCT's got sort of an extra edge to it over some of the trade shows that you go to, where you literally just visit a stand and go off. JCT, because we're here for the 2 days and the evening, we can actually talk over a beer and actually move some of this stuff along.
And you've been talking, I saw, to local authorities. There's a good mix of the suppliers and then the customers all in one place as well.
Yes, and that's another really good thing about JCT, is it does attract a good mix of people, and it attracts the right sort of people in having the sort of discussions that companies like SRL and other companies need to have, with the customers. You've got some good technical clients, that you can really have meaningful conversations with about technology and what we can do with it for the future.
So the first thing that we had to do was to prove that AI is able to be trained to control traffic. So we did that in simulation first. We used our traffic data to calibrate various microsimulations and started to train an algorithm in this environment. So reinforcement learning is an experience-based learning system. So it learns by trial and error. So simulation is obviously key. We don't want to let out an algorithm that doesn't really know anything about traffic control into the real world. But we trained our algorithm across hundreds of thousands of hours of simulation, and it started to exhibit good behavior. So much so that we were confident that we could start to deploy it into the real world. So I'm really excited to kind of announce our big high-level figure at the moment, which is that we have managed to observe a reduction in journey times across kind of our key target junction of 23% for motorized vehicles. So is our congestion metric. And the way that we calculated this was we have upstream sensors that are gathering ANPR data. So we are using the journey times across all the different routes through this junction. And what you see in this graph is in orange, so the median journey times throughout the day, while the incumbent scoot system is in control, and in blue are median journey times while the Vivacity system is in control. And we did A/B testing across the period of an entire month to gather this data. So it's really kind of important to see here as well is that it's not just doing well across one period of the day. It's not doing well across peaks or off peaks or evening peaks. It's doing well across the entire range. So what it's doing is actually very, it's adaptive. It's adapting to these changes in demand by itself independently.
Raquel, welcome to the JCT Traffic Signal Symposium. Why is it important for Vivacity to be here?
So it's important for us to be here for a couple of reasons. Obviously, we've been ingrained in the industry for a few years now. We want to showcase our capabilities on not only on the sensor side, to showcase kind of how far we've come on the traffic signal side. So we're using our sensors now to optimize traffic signals. And so we want to basically not only showcase what we're doing, but also learn from the industry and get our name out there and sort of show them what we can do.
I guess that's the thing. You can show them what you can do because the difference in the way signals would be timed 10, 20 years ago and the power of the sort of solutions you've got mean that we've got so many more possibilities to reduce emissions, make things more efficient at a fraction of the cost it used to be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we have an ability here to implement a system that is really adaptable, that you don't have to kind of program in advance and can continue to learn from the real world. And then on top of that, with the advances in different types of sensors and the way that you can detect not only cars, but pedestrians and cyclists, you can time traffic signals to prioritize for any mode of transportation, depending on the time of the day, depending on the specific region's policies, politics, strategies. And so that's really what we're trying to do and kind of move the needle in the transport sector in order to kind of create much more sustainable traffic networks for all.
And I guess an event like this is important to actually get the feedback, not of what you can offer, but also to listen to the customers as to what they need and want.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's a lot of people here that do not hold back on giving us feedback and challenging us, and we're here to listen to those challenges to ensure that not only we're creating a system that is valuable to everybody or to as many people as possible, but also to kind of preempt any of these challenges going forward in terms of the performance numbers that we're putting out there, in terms of the complexity of the system that we're designing.
And how grateful is the industry, not just Vivacity, but all the exhibitors here, at the efforts that JCT have put into actually putting this event on this year?
Oh, incredibly grateful. I mean, last year was, they made such a big effort last year, which was wonderful, but nothing replaces the energy that you get from being surrounded by people, putting names to faces after almost 2 years of video conferencing with somebody, and building those relationships are going to drive the industry forward over the next couple of years.
And those sentiments were echoed around the whole event.
It's the chance to learn new things and meet new people actually by accident. And some of the most important learnings in your professional life, I think, do happen by accident. It's also really important for new entrants into our sector. You can't make those closer networks over Zoom, try as you might. So if you're new to the industry, it's really important that these events are here to support you so that you can start becoming a face, if you like.
I think it's really good for the networking. Obviously last year it was virtual, which was great. It's good to get the learning and to make sure that we're doing things the right way as a local authority. But the networking is really important for me, being able to have those contacts, and wherever I'm struggling I can get in contact with those people.
From the time I arrived on Tuesday, it's been a real buzz about the place. We've looked forward to coming back, talking to people that were preparing to come here, talking to the delegates that are here. Been absolute interest. People are really, really interested in the networking, actually getting back to doing what we do best.
I think what's good today is people for the first time in, 18 months, have been able to get together and not just discuss the project they're on, but actually discuss what's the most important issues we need to address going forward. And what I've seen from the programme is a lot of good papers being presented on the carbon agenda. They may not be badged as that and they may not come across as that, but actually if as an ambassador I can tease out of the work we're doing in ITS UK the positives about how technology can be used to address climate change and reduce carbon emissions, we can then use events like this to take forward that agenda and actually put forward coherent solutions to future sustainable transport issues.
How important is it for government to be at events like this symposium?
I think it's increasingly important. I think we're increasingly at the stage now where we don't have all the technology answers. We know what policies we want to implement, we know what ministers want to do, we know at a high level where we want to get to, so we talk about decarbonisation, we talk about active travel, we talk about a whole range of measures, we understand where technology is going generally, but we really need the conversations with the people in this room to be able to think about that in detail and understand what that will really mean and how the legacy technology that's out there, how the technology we're buying today will be future-proof for the demands of tomorrow.
The whole event was made possible thanks to the generous support of the industry, as host John Nightingale was keen to point out.
Just some special mentions. Many of you enjoyed the barbecue last night. That was sponsored by Aldridge Traffic. Thank you very much. You've been doing that for a number of years, and we do really appreciate that sponsorship last night. Your lanyards are sponsored this year by PTV. And then, perhaps one of the most important groups of sponsors, the bar was sponsored last night by this consortium of exhibitors, and they're also paying for your complimentary drinks tonight after the gala dinner. SRL are taking big participation this year, and they've actually very kindly chipped in to support your refreshments and your lunch today. So they're giving some sponsorship for that, and I'd like to thank SRL for their input. Tonight, we've obviously got a gala dinner, but before that, at 6:30, and I'll remind you about timings a little bit later on, we've again got a champagne reception, which is sponsored by Swarco, and that'll be at 6:30 in the auditorium there, just in front of the gala dinner. And then, of course, we've got the UNEX Traffic gala dinner. They put a lot of effort into that, and there's something like 180 of us sitting down to dinner tonight. I'd also like to thank the Institute of Highway Engineers. We've changed things around a bit with the judging this year. As you know, normally I am charging around this morning trying to commandeer some judges and press ganging people into doing the judging. Well, we put this on another footing this year, and the IHE have stepped in, and what we want to do is we want to get more kudos to the prizes. One of the biggest thank yous I've got to say is to Highways News. Paul Hutton has done an amazing job in publicity for this event, and indeed he's supporting this, and he's also running an initiative that is allowing us to film the presentations this year.
Not surprisingly, the environment was a key subject for discussion, with both hardware and software solutions explained.
And how it works, we have a chamber which is dug into the roadside. This is the picture at the bottom here. And the other pictures of it are of it in situ. That chamber, when it reaches flood condition, there's a lot of water around it, that essentially fills with water. And there's pea gravel around it to ensure it does so. And inside that is a pressure sensor. Now, the pressure sensor detects the pressure of the head of water above the sensor. And it's calibrated so that it will react to a level of water that's equivalent, a pressure which is equivalent to the level of water required to flood the road at that location. So some fairly complex surveying and calibration are required to get that right. It's also complicated to say. And this pressure sensor, it's an analog sensor, and it sends a message to the control in the flood control cabinet, which then sends a message to the control system to set the warning signs. Now, the signs itself, they're quite small compared to some of the variable message signs you'll see on motorways and town centres, but big enough to display that flood and road closed message with flashing hazards. There's radar detection built into them. This is a solution we came up with so that there's the option for them to only be activated when there's vehicles approaching them. So there's another potential solution to extend the battery life of some of these installations to make sure that they are operable when they need to be operable. And they have a full matrix panel, so they're not like a vehicle activated sign, they are a full matrix panel, so you have the option then to be able to change the messages and show other messages.
And it's quite a really illustrative example of actually, the information that we see, and it's very, very powerful. So, importantly, only 57% of the days that we did our evaluation on, air quality threshold was exceeded. So actually 43% of the day, we were actually under the air quality. Now this was October, November 2020, so traffic was lower. Of those days, doing an intervention, so actually playing a response plan in, actually provided benefit in 65% of those occasions. Okay, so actually it does show that traffic management can help to reduce. And our traffic interventions were increasing green time, reducing green time, diverting traffic onto a different route, etc., etc. So no silver bullet, so standard traffic engineering responses, but pulled together into a strategy and then compared with in the simulation. Of which the general improvement was about 5%.
And of course everyone enjoyed the social occasions, which are such a key part of the symposium, with the barbecue on the Tuesday night before the event began and the gala dinner on the Wednesday between days 1 and 2. A real happy sense of normality was back. While the serious knowledge sharing continued in the lecture theatre, including a brilliant example of why standards are so important.
A great example of plug and play is the plug itself, as the name suggests, the humble 13 amp plug. Now, the clue is in the name there to some extent. I know for a start I can get up to 13 amps out of this plug. I know I can get 230 volts out of this plug. I know which pins are which, and I know exactly what distances there are between all the pins. Why is this important? Well, it's important because if I'm writing my notes for today's talk and it's a little bit dark on my desk, I need some more light. I can go out to IKEA, I can buy a desk lamp, I can come home and I can plug it in and I will have light. I don't need to employ an electrician to wire my desk lamp into my house. I don't need to employ a firm of consultants to explore options for the illumination of my workspace. It just works.
With prizes for the best papers.
Brilliant. And I jumped at the opportunity when John contacted me for this because we've got such a connection with JCT and with the Symposium. We have a really, really good base of traffic signal engineers in the IHE, and I think we're the right people to actually do that judging. So we've got 3 excellent judges that are doing it this year, and hopefully they'll pick out the best papers and everybody will agree with them.
Okay, let's find out now who won.
The overall winner was for part 3 of a trilogy, which was the 3 years of developing AI, which was vivacity and transportation for the Greater Manchester.
Remember, you can see every paper in full on demand from December 2021. Look out for more details to come.
So the audience has gone, the exhibitors have packed down their stands, and suddenly we're just in an empty, echoey lecture theatre again. And I'm sitting with a tired, relieved, and I should think pretty smug John Nightingale. John, you did it.
Yeah, not so much smug, exhausted, yes, but yes, we did do it. Together we did it. You know, it wasn't just me. I mean, a community of exhibitors, old friends, Highways News, everybody who pitched in. So I think, you know, it's not just for us to be proud. I think everybody should be proud. So yeah, thank you.
Well, the comments from the people we spoke to who all said how great it's been after 18 long months for us all to be back together again has summed up the whole sense of happiness that we've had here at the JCT Traffic Signal Symposium this year. The video you've seen can't really capture that, but I hope we've given you as best a highlight as possible. Thank you for watching, and make sure that you see us in Nottingham, September 2022.